Hey everyone, Jake Smeester. I'm just hearing an echo of my own voice. I'm going to turn down, there we go. All right, Jake Smeester here, content creative specialist for Amazon Sumerian. And today we are going to be looking at continuing our topic of creating an interactive city. I'm sorry, I'm looking to the side. I'm looking at the screen that you're also looking at myself. I'm going to move myself over because I'm kind of blocking it, and boom, there we go. All right, creating an interactive city, and today we're going to look at streaming video and also doing some advertisements. And when I say advertisements, I mean essentially streaming live images, also using S3. That is the topic for today. If you joined last week, you may remember that we were looking at how to create night and day and rotating a sphere and making it go from fully opaque to invisible, or increasing and decreasing the opacity of a sphere to make it dark, and then also rotating a light around that. I'm going to cover again really quickly what we did and some updates to the scene that I made just real quick, because going forward I did some interesting stuff last week and just wanted to cover that. So we're going to get into both of those things right now. Okay, so I'm going to jump over to my scene here. If you've been with us, this is using a model that we found in Turbo Squid. And if anybody's interested in that model, I can send the link. I've done that a few times. I just forgot to pull it up here for right now. But I can do that. So what this is a model. This is created in Turbo Squid. Pulled it into, I believe, an OBJ file. Could be an FBX. It's an FBX. And that is what we have an echo on the sound. What about now? I don't know where that echo's coming from. Let me test it out. Hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. I still don't hear anything. I don't have two mics turned on, so I don't know where that would be coming from. Okay, so are we good now? I'm not touching anything. Are we good to go? Rizza Bobby, Cloud Reach Stewart, ECG Taylor, my man. Let me know if I need to fix anything. Good, good, good. All right, good. I will continue. Thank you for giving me the heads up. All right, so here's our scene. The way we finished last week was I just added this cone. And when you click the cone, essentially it will turn get my hand in the camera here. It'll turn the sphere that is the night sphere. It's just a big black sphere. I'm having big dark sphere. Having trouble actually zooming out to view that. And what that does is it shows the sphere and then it disappears the sphere. So it essentially goes from a blue sky to a night sky just by having the sphere go in with opacity and then go out. And then it also rotates, and the sphere inside of it has a light, which mimics the sun, and it rotates just constantly, or we made it rotate through a few different ways. So it would just rotate just like the sun is rotating around the earth. So that is the way we left it. And we made it so that when we click on this cone, it would flip up to turn daytime, and it would make the sphere invisible. And then when you click it again, it would flip again, and so the light would be underneath the scene, so you wouldn't have any light, and then the sphere would come back on, and so it appeared nighttime. I've deleted all that, and what I've essentially done is just added two behaviors to this sphere. The sphere, again, has the sphere itself, and it contains the light. And the way we've done it is that I'll go ahead and play my scene. I've just made it continuous so that I have two behaviors. I'll show these behaviors so that it's taking 10 seconds to turn on the sphere and then turn it off again. So that's just going back and forth. So it'll continue to run just like the real sun does. And then what's the other? That's the opacity. So that's the actually opacity of the sphere going on and off. And then we have the rotate behavior. So this is now rotating the same sphere And it's essentially, it's rotating at 180 degrees and then rotating it 180 degrees again. So it's just constantly going around. Oh, there it is. Get my finger in. So just constantly going around and around. That's the way I'm going to leave it. I don't really want to control it by clicking a random cone. We're just doing that for demo purposes. So I'm going to click that cone. I'm going to stop my scene and delete. Okay, so here it is. This is our scene. Now, what I would like to do is I'm going to create an entity and just add a directional light for, I'm going to turn it off most of the time. And I'm going to make it just negative 90 degrees. And I'll put it over here just so we can have light when we're editing. Okay. All right, so there we are. Zoom into our city. Actually, I don't want it so direct. Let's have it. Yeah, there we go. All right, so now we're set up the way we want to be set up. Now we want to add some video to start off with, and then also some images that will kind of rotate through using S3. The first part, adding video, is a fairly simple thing. There's several tutorials out there. A lot of people have tried it, and we have had some issues that we've had to kind of fix that have allowed people to now make it usable in a published scene. So streaming, I believe this is true. I mean, I could be wrong about this. But last I understood is that you can stream a YouTube video now in a scene, in a published scene, and that works. There are still some issues within VR, so that's kind of a separate issue, but what we're going to look at today does work. So what we're going to do is create an entity and then create a HTML 3D entity. And again, this one is it's kind of tied to the streaming images, which is why I wanted to do it today, but it's a common capability that people have played around with. It's been in our tutorials for quite some time. Now, what am I doing? I just added a HTML 3D entity, and I'm just going to place this on this random billboard. It's really jumpy for some reason. Not sure why that is. All right, I'm going to make it match the size of this billboard. We're almost there. And let's make it 5.6. That's probably good. Let's make it 3 in height. That's too big. 2.8. That'd probably work. All right, so what I was trying to say about this specific entity, or about what we're doing right here, this has been available for a while. So many of you watching have probably done this and fully aware of that. But again, these two things are kind of tied together in terms of like advertisements, showing video within a scene. So I thought they should go hand in hand. So let's see, it's not quite big enough. 5.7, that'll probably work. The issue is you don't want to do it too close to this because then you'll get some Z fighting when you're really far away. Meaning it's not quite sure like which is in front, the HTML 3D entity or this billboard image or this material. So you want to have a little bit of space just so we don't get as much Z fighting. All right, so adding a video is super easy. All you need to do is open the editor of your HTML 3D entity. So I have the HTML 3D entity selected. Now you just got to open the editor. So that'll open the HTML component of this component or of this entity. And then you just need to jump to any YouTube video you want. And I'm just going to play this. This is a Jack Ryan season 1 trailer, an Amazon original. And I'll just pause that. This is just a trailer. I'm going to share. I'm going to embed over here. And let's see. I'm going to unclick all these embed options because I don't want any of that. And copy. that's just going to get our iframe. Open the editor again, and I'm just going to paste it in there. And there you go. You can see it. It's not quite, I'd probably have to mess with the dimensions a little bit more because you see it's cutting off a little bit. So let's play it and see how it works. There would be sound. You see how we have the day turning into night and vice versa. That's way too loud. Oh, I see why. I was getting a duplicate or some echo. All right, so I don't have the sound turned on. I don't think. Nope. Okay. So it is an HTML entity in 3D space. So HTML entities would not be in 3D space. They would just kind of appear as a layer in front of our scene. HTML 3D entities act differently to where they actually are living in space. Living in our 3D space. So pretty cool. I can pause it there. Okay, so that covers and you see how it continues to go night and day. So those both behaviors are, let's see, Cloudreach Stewart, add autoplay 1 to the, I'm confused. Are you asking me a question or are you informing me to do something? Cloudreach Stewart, let me know what you're implying there. All right, the next thing I want to do, I'll go to respond to that, but I'm going to keep moving on here. So again, this is probably something a lot of you have done before, so nothing too profound, but again, goes well with this topic. The next is, how do you add some images pulling from S3 and display them on a texture? That's what we're going to look at next. Saves you having to click on the play. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Cloudreach Stewart is saying in the chat room that add autoplay 1 to the end of the embed URL. Yes, you could make it so it autoplays. So you play your scene and it automatically plays. You are correct. And I think we find that. Where is that? Oh, you add autoplay equals 1 to the end of the. I gotcha. Okay. Yep. That is something you could totally do. I like to be able to control it myself, but. All right, what are we going to do next? All right, images. How do we do that? So we're going to create another entity, and you really could grab any entity you want. I'm going to grab a quad. Remember, quads are unique in that you can see them from one direction, only one direction, and not the other, which is useful for lots of situations. I'm going to place this one right in front of this billboard. And gonna move him back. Let's again try to match. Actually, you know what we can do is HTML 3D entity 5.7 2.8. This might save us some time. 5.7 2.8. This is actually probably close, but it just is not lined up properly. There we go. Okay, so that was just a quad. And now what we got to do is add a component, and we're going to use the script component. We're going to press the plus button and then hit custom to add a new script. And we don't have a script right now. Well, we do have a script, but it's just a blank script. And we can edit it by hitting the edit button. And here we are. I already have it in here, but I'm pulling it from another file. So I'm just gonna copy and paste here, delete all that, and then add this one. Okay, so what do we have here? Let's press play. I'm gonna save this, and then we're gonna press play to see how this works. See, it's shuffling through all these different images. One thing I did was I just grabbed, let's see, I was sitting at my desk yesterday and was thinking about which different images I should use. And I was thinking about a video I had been watching recently on Netflix. So I said, I'll grab Netflix. Then I also thought of, let's see, I thought I had a different one in here that is not displayed. I was listening to Pandora also. And so anyway, it might show a Pandora image in there. Anyway, so I just grabbed a bunch of random images. I threw them in an S3 bucket. I made all of the images and also the bucket itself public. And I also made some changes to the permissions, allowing it to the core's permissions to allow these to be actually accessed through an external application, which is what we're doing here. And so the way this works is, where am I? Quad. Script. Let me pull this back up. Oh, I'm in play mode. All right. So essentially this function right here, the load image, from what it is doing is it is loading an image, one of the 5 images that I have that I titled in my S3 bucket as, if you have any questions, I just got to look at there we go. I titled all of my images, image 1, image 2, or 1 image img, 2 image.jpg. And so it's pulling from that bucket. And it's pulling from one of the 5 that ends in .jpg, and then this function is actually adding it as a texture to the entity that this is added to, which is our quad entity. And in this setup function, what it is doing is pulling from the actual S3 bucket, and I am going to, so that's the URL to the S3 bucket. I will be deleting that bucket shortly. Just FYI, but you can set this up yourself also. And then it is changing it every 2 seconds. And so that's the way it is doing. So this is displaying the image as a texture or as a material texture on the quad, and this is accessing the actual S3 bucket. So that is the way this works. And so when we press play, and the other thing I did, I made one thing to notice. So when I say Z fighting, if you're curious what that means, so you know how I placed that quad really, really close to that billboard, as close as possible? Well, when I get really far away, the engine doesn't know necessarily which is in front because they're so close together. And you can see that because it kind of goes back and forth between that quad image and then also the billboard image. Doesn't happen as much over here on this 3D entity, but if I move back, we'll probably see that a little bit more. And you see it also happening on these buildings too. That's just because the way this model is constructed, when you get really far away, those textures are kind of fighting with each other to be displayed to the camera. All right, so that is what we got. So the other thing that I did in the video, in the Twitter video, if you saw that, was I added a fly cam. And so if we wanted to add a fly cam, this is something I'll probably just keep in this scene. I'm moving my fly cam over here to kind of the edge of the city. I also have plans to keep adding on to the city. Somebody was asking in Slack, let's see, who was that? I can't remember who was asking that. I actually can't remember. I just drew a blank on what I was even talking about. But anyway, we are going to be. Oh, that's right. Somebody was asking me how did we construct? Are there videos on how this was constructed to begin with? And the answer to that question was I spent a couple weeks actually assembling these models together, because all of these models are all separate. So if the Jake City smaller, it's just what I have it named. It's really not a very good name. But if I look, all of these different, you see if I select these, like the church, City Hall, all of these are separate entities that are nested into this larger entity. So when I select these, now I can actually dig into the individual buildings, the roads, the billboards, the props, the cars, the vehicles, and everything like that. So I spent several weeks actually assembling this all together and placing where I wanted, trying to line up the roads and the sidewalks and a river, canal, and things like that. And I got a little bit tired of trying to do that because I'm not a graphic designer, but I'm also not a 3D model designer either. So I was getting a little bit tired of just doing the same thing kind of over and over and over again. It was probably a little bit boring to watch too after a while. And so I talked to one of our creatives who essentially got me kind of put this together. So I'm going to start adding onto it and kind of try to build out more and more of the city. But again, some of that is not the most interesting to watch after a while. It's good to kind of get an idea of how it works, and definitely learned a lot of things through that process. But I just wanted to build it so I could start adding some of these more interesting features, such as, how do you change the lighting from night to day, and how do you make it night sky and blue sky? How do you add videos? How do you add images? So that's why I kind of jumped ahead. Okay, so let's go back to my fly cam, and I'm going to make it my main camera. And I'm going to press play. And the cool thing about the fly camera is that using your WASD keys, and you can, over here, because I have the flying cam selected, you could change it if you want. And I actually am going to. So I'm going to stop. And forward. I'm going to use the arrows. Okay, so now I'm going to try it again. I can press play. And I also see that changing billboard to essentially demonstrate how to create advertisements. Now the cool thing is, one of the issues that you're always going to face whenever you are building a 3D scene is size. Like, how big is the scene? How much compute or power does it take to actually load the scene and play the scene? So textures surprisingly actually take up a lot of space. And so if you even look at how much is taken up in this scene, the textures and images are going to be what actually take up a lot. So one thing that's nice is when you actually pull from S3, you can display them in a way so you're not actually storing the image in your scene itself. You're just streaming it from another source. So that's another way to actually optimize your scene and make it a lot more efficient. Okay, so that shows how to do those things. I can also, if people are interested, I can send you that script that I did, and I can change around a little bit so you're not pulling from the bucket that I created, because that will not be available pretty much right after this is done. But you can do this yourself. So if you are interested, go ahead and send me a message, and I will send you that. I'll send you that asset pack. It's not an asset pack. I'll send you that script file, just a text file. All right, so that's one thing. That kind of covers everything I wanted to cover, and we're only 25 minutes in. I have more time. So, again, if there are any questions related or unrelated to this, please shoot them out there. That is totally fine. And there's something else I wanted to do, which was, I would like to, and I might be jumping ahead. This is just something I thought would be fun to do. Using this fly cam, so this is the unrehearsed part of this broadcast. I would like to be able to go into that is something I want to do. There are two things I would like to do. I would like to be able to fly the camera into a building, so that when I enter the building, I can actually go inside of the building. So right now, let's see what this looks like. If I actually go in this building, what's going to be inside of it? Nothing really. I mean, it's not meant to be a displayable building from the inside. So how do you do that? Well, you could make it so that your fly cam can go into it, and then you'd have to use a state machine or scripting that would then change your view and your surroundings. So like there's several different ways you can do that. Another thing you could do is So anyway, that's one issue. That's one thing I'd like to do. The other thing I'd like to do, and this might have to do with what I'm going to try to build. You might hear a dog barking in the background. Apologies for that. I'd like to be able to drive a car around in the scene. So I'm curious how that will work. That's what I think would probably be most beneficial right now, because I have a better idea of how that works. The moving camera into another building and having it display the inside is... I probably need a little bit of prep for that. So let's go ahead and do that. Drive a car around. How do we do that? Let's pick a good car. There's a muscle car in here. I'm going to search for muscle. There it is. Perfect. All right, I'm going to add a component onto this, and we'll do state machine. And we're going to add a new behavior. And we're going to just call it movement. There's several things that go into this. So what I would like to be able to do is drive a car around, but I also want it to be able to bump into buildings, which is kind of a whole other issue itself, having to do with colliders. Not issue, whole other thing you got to work through. But first, let's just be able to drive it around. Okay, so I'm going to call this no movement. And let's do key down. And let's just make it the up arrow. We'll use the up arrow. And then we're going to add another state. If anybody's just joining us, we first covered how to add display images using S3 and also just YouTube videos on billboards to mimic advertisements, and billboards, functional or rotating billboards. We have more time, and so we finished that, so now I'm moving on to how do we control a car and drive it around our scene. So we will go to make this the forward movement. And let's add action. We're going to do tween move. This is completely unrehearsed. I have really no idea how this is going to function, but why not? Let's see. So he's facing right now the Z direction. You see that? So the front of his car is pointing down the Z axis. So we're going to make that 1 and just see how that operates. We'll make it 2.2 seconds. And then we're going to add another action to key up. And the key up we're going to do is the up arrow also. Oh, shoot. I don't want my fly cam to be the camera. So let's go back to orbit cam, and we'll make that my main camera. All right. Now how to get my movement behavior back. Not working. Might because I had relative selected. That tends to be the issue. Okay, he moved. Ryan Reese, I believe that's probably you, asking how long does it take to get the videos saved to Twitch so we can work through this once we have more assets. As soon as I'm done, it'll be available. on this Twitch channel. So as soon as I stop, you'll be able to do this. So I can wrap it up quicker if you want. If you don't want me to, if you want to get on with it. But yeah, essentially as soon as I'm done, it'll be there. All right, let's make this 0.1. I don't know what happened to my car. It disappeared. So let's try again. 0.1. That might have been too much. Did he disappear underground? I don't know. Let's try translation on the x-axis instead. I don't know where he's going. Okay. Tween move. Forward. Translation is 1. Maybe we do want this to be. Let's try something else. We all love instant gratification. I know. I'm going to try a different action. Let's do set rigid body velocity. This might be a better one. There's a few things we might have to do though. Let's try just 5. The issue is though is I don't have a rigid body on this entity yet. So there's a few things I need to do. I thought I could do this without it, but maybe not. So let's try adding. Sorry, I'm going to add a rigid body to this. So a rigid body will make the car fall to the ground. But right now there's actually no ground because there's no colliders either on the car itself or on the ground level itself. So what we need to do is, so I have a disc already, that is getting the hiccups. We have a disc already, this big disc. And instead of, anyway, all we need to do is add a component and add a collider and add an infinite plane. So it's going to go on infinitely large. All right, so we have a collider there. I need this muscle car again. And I need to add a component, collider, and then also rigid body. These two work in tandem together. So the collider treats it as a physical object, both the ground and the car. So two separate physical objects that can collide with each other. And the rigid body applies a gravitational pull to the car, so it'll actually fall down. So let's see what happens here. Cloud's Reach Stewie, I have a question for you later after you finish the car. Is there a Sumerian way of controlling the volume on an HD HTML 3D object? The reason I ask is embedded YouTube video with autoplay is set. You can control so the question is, how do you control the volume? You can control the global volume of your scene. I can show you do that in a moment. Trying to think what trying to do. So a question for you, Cloud Reach Stewart, is are you wanting to be able to control just the volume separately from the rest of the volume in the scene? Let me know what you think of that. So it's falling. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm changing these half extents. So essentially the collider boundary for this entity is within this green wire box. Right now it is currently falling through the ground, which is not what we want, obviously. Just have the volume. Okay, I'll finish the car. All right, it goes right through. Not sure why that is. I think I do know why that is. So there's a known issue regarding changing the scale of an entity and it messing up the collider. So right now, if you move it beyond 1, 1, 1 on the scale properties in the transform component, it can mess up the collider. And so because this is 100, that might be what's going on. I have a suspicion it is. I'm going to reload my scene and just see if that might help. Because sometimes with colliders, it's best just to reload. And we'll see what happens. All right, my car is still floating. And press the play, see what happens with the car. I have a feeling it's going to still just fall through the... Yeah. Okay, so we have an option here. I'm going to create an empty entity. I'm just going to call it car. And I'm going to add it in here. I'll actually call it muscle car. All right, this is just so I can find this easier. So I can display both of them at the same time. So I'm going to take this car here and move it into this one. All right, and now I'm going to add a collider. I'm going to remove the rigid body and remove a collider on this one. Actually, no, we don't. Hold on. I jumped ahead too soon. All right, so I'm going to first grab I'm going to line these up so they're in the same spot. So I'm bringing them over to line up to be right in the middle of the car. So they are in the same spatial location. Okay. Now I'm going to grab the muscle car. And now on this component, so I added an empty entity, then I nested the car inside that entity. So if you notice, this muscle car still has a scale translation value of 1, 1, and 1. And so now let's add on the rigid body and also a collider. And the box is probably fine, even though I might need to increase the size of it to something like that. There we go. So it's roughly our car. So I can probably even move this guy maybe right there. So now I can really get, there we go. All right. Let's see what happens. Still not working. My plans are getting foiled. Always frustrating. Oh, okay. Actually, it's working. It is working. Check it out. It's sitting right down there. But the issue is my disk is actually sitting way below. That's why I can't see it. So now all I need to do is bring, and now I remember why I did this. The disk itself the reason I did that is because I'm trying to think what to do. So the reason I had it down below is because I just didn't want there to be Z fighting between the disk and the rest of the city. Right now it looks like the city's underwater of some kind. And so I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do, however, let's duplicate that disk. And let's bring it over here. I'm just trying to get this close in the city so I can see it. Taylor, I think can you remove the geometry or material? Yes, I can, and that's what I'm gonna do. But I do want the other disk there. I just want it down below. So I'm gonna make it so what you just said is exactly what I'm gonna do. So there we go. Now, again, there's a lot of Z fighting there, meaning they're really in the same spot. So this is disk 2, of which I'm going to just remove the geometry. But the collider is still on it. So now let's go to our muscle car. Press play. And it should fall to the ground on the street, and it appears as if it's actually landing on the street, but it's not. It's actually landing on an invisible disc that's lined up at the same level as the street. Great. I mean, it's a little bit too low, but that will work for now. All right, I'm just going to. That's fine. All right, so let's now add a component to this. What I would love to be able to do is get just get some movement out of this car. So I'm going to take my same movement behavior that I added, and I'm going to add it to this to the muscle car entity, and I'm going to remove it. I'm just going to remove the state machine from the child entity, kind of really the model itself. All right, so now let's go edit it again. Set rigid body. All right, so velocity is 5 using the up arrow. So set rigid body velocity is essentially going to add some movement to it. So it's going to add some velocity to something with a rigid body, which this does have. And again, I have not gone through this. This is me just experimenting. I know some other ways and some other things I've seen. I just have to dig up some old materials that of a scene that I've built before. Okay, so this is kind of working. It's moving. Let's make it 10. Play the scene again. It's just not moving very much. It's because 10 is probably not enough. This is actually a pretty big, large scene in terms of size. So 10 might not actually be, there we go. That might be too much. Let's make it 50. Is that muscle car rigged or is it just going to move? That's a good question. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm adding a behavior to it, Ryan Reese, to allow myself to control it using my control pad here. What just happened to it? Oh, it flipped over. So let's get a better view of this. And so it's going in the wrong direction. Actually, let's just make it go negative 50 so that it goes forward. I think I have to stop and play that scene again. Okay. It's working. Not quite the way I want, but it is controllable, and you can use the what do you call it? The keyboard to control its movement. Again, I don't want it flipping upside down like it is, and see, we just keep going. It's just flying all over the place. That's not exactly what I want. You see, just keep going off into the distance there. And we could go, let's just duplicate this so we can move it in both directions. So I'm going to duplicate the forward action. What is going on here? Duplicate. And we'll add another action, which is key down. We'll do the back arrow. So essentially we're adding two directions it can go. Nope. We need to add it to this one, the no movement. Key down. Do the back arrow. And this one we will go positive 50. And we got to wire these up with transitions. All right, great. It's working, sort of. I want to try, I'm not really sure why the tween move wasn't working before. So I'm going to try that again, and then we'll call it a day. We're going to use tween move here. Oh, this is backward. So time is, we'll just make it 500 milliseconds. Let's see, we did fit negative, so let's go positive on this one. Let's go positive 10. Okay, it kind of works. I'm just going to try this guy, and then we'll do negative 10. All right, so instead of the set rigid body velocity, let's do 50. And let's do, well, negative 50 now, positive 50. Okay, I got some work to do for this one. But again, we can kind of see the different options. We have tween move, which is just moving it from one location to another. And then you also have this set rigid body velocity that is essentially using physics to add a push or a energy to the car, so it actually is moving. But the problem is it's not designed to stay on the ground. It's just going to kind of rotate because it's mimicking or mimicking real life physics. So I'm going to do, this is something I've been wanting to do, is be able to control a car to drive around the city. This is something I'm going to work on. And so hopefully by next week, I'll have a good answer on how to do this. And so, yeah, we're about at 50 minutes, so I think that's probably good. If there are any other questions I can answer right now, Is there anything that I need to adjust? Or CloudReach Stewart, did I answer your question, or do you need me to address it again or show you? The question was, how do you add control volume? I'll show you how to do that real quick, and while you can respond if you would like. I'm selecting the top level entity over here. I'm going to stop my scene. And right, so top level entity, and then environment settings over here in the inspector panel. There you've seen your sound volume, and so you can select it to be 1 or 0 if you want to turn everything down. So but that's global settings. So there is, if you're doing I was hoping there's a separate way of isolating the volume of an HTML 3D object. And then Ryan Reese asking another question, just reading the chat room, but with your episode 2, you play sound. It seems that doing pause, sound, or stop doesn't work in your room with a light switch. I'm not. So there's two things here. So CloudReach Stewart, let's talk about this. Is there a way to control that within the scene? So essentially, if you think about what it's doing, an HTML 3D entity is pulling HTML from a completely separate source and placing it in your scene. So you can control it, I suppose. Let's go back to that. Okay, so right now, if you look at the HTML 3D entity, there's nothing to do with sound on here because this is just HTML. There's really no sound involved in this entity itself. It's just pulling it from a different location, which is YouTube. It's just embedded. So what you can do, though, is if we go back to YouTube, show player controls. Let's maybe, if you can control the embed code on here. And let's try doing this. This may or may not get you what you want. So I'm going back to my iframe, saving it, and then let's play it. There's no YouTube embed parameter for volume. Okay, I did not know that, which is interesting. So I have it on. Okay, so it's really controlled from, okay. Yeah, I to answer that question, I don't think, I'm just thinking about it. There might be a way to do that. Reach out to me on Slack, if you would, and send me a direct message, and I will try to find an answer for that for you. Are you on, Stuart, are you on Slack? If you are, that'd be great. Send me a message, follow up. Then, Taylor, you got a question? Hold on, there's a few. Let me go back with your episode 2. So Ryan Reese asked the question, in your episode 2 with play sound, it seems that doing pause sound or stop sound doesn't work in a room with a light switch. That I don't remember that particular instance. Again, Ryan, reach out to me if you would like, and we can address your specific scene, and we can try to figure out how to get the sound to work in the way that you want. You should be able to control volume. I don't remember that specific instance in that episode. But reach out to me separately, and I can try to guide you on that. Taylor, for the texture in an S3 bucket, is there a way to access them without making the bucket public? There is probably a way to do that. It just depends on, yeah, I would assume so. I don't know the answer to that question right now, but I would assume you can specify it based on who is accessing it and through which specific scene. I would Yes, especially if you use a Cognito identity pool ID and you connect it with that. I'm sure there's a way to make it not public, but only for that scene. If that makes sense. Stuart, another question just makes for great billboards. Thanks for the effort in answering. So that's it. I can hang around if there are any more questions. If I didn't answer the question enough, let me know. I'll hang out for another minute. Good drink of water here. Using my cool Sumerian pint glass. I was thinking right before I started streaming, why am I not drinking beer in this pint glass? It's a pint glass. A Sumerian pint glass. It's very cool. All right. I think that should wrap it up. You can always reach myself, other engineers, other team members. You can talk to each other. Also, there's a lot of really proactive and enthusiastic users of Sumerian, people that can answer a lot of good questions too. How do we not have our own Sumerian glasses? That's a good question. Everybody should have one. Come visit us. I'll see what I can do in Seattle. Next time we expect you to be drinking a beer. Deal. I'll be drinking a beer. Maybe remind me when I give the shout out on Slack to say, in 20 minutes I'll be live on Slack. Maybe say, hey, get your beer. And I will. Beer is good. All right, thanks everybody. I'm going to go ahead and throw up the resource slide for other people that might want to know where to find us, whether it's Slack, Twitch, AWS, Reddit, other places too. So there you go. Thanks for joining.